Hey there, this is Catherine Cartwright. I am sharing a couple of my favorite techniques today. I felt like doing some embossing and watercoloring. So I'm going to begin by using some watercolor paper. I've got a pretty floral stamp set and I'm using some Versamark ink. I'm going to stamp that twice, making sure I have good coverage because it is kind of thicker cardstock, and being watercolor, to me, it just takes a little more effort to get your ink to stick a little bit. So then I'm going to use some detail black embossing powder I have had forever, and I am using that up. I had some little smudges around, so I'm just using a paintbrush. I'm not too worried about it if I've got some little flecks around there, because I'm going to do some watercoloring over it. So I'm not too concerned. You could always take your sand eraser and scrape some of that off if you ever have any little fuzzies or whatever you want to call them, melted embossing powder, I guess technically. So I'm just going to heat emboss this. This takes a little bit longer too on watercolor paper, I find. I have to let my heat tool get super hot, and then I come over there and I get that shiny, pretty finished look on it. I'm using some Tropicals watercolor paints that had been in my stash for a while. And you can see my brush is not clean because I immediately start using it and it turns yellow. So I've just got my microfiber towel over there that I'm going to use to help me switch off colors. So I've started with this pink. I've got a good bit of water. I did spray my paper, so I'm getting a little bit of running. You don't get it quite as bad, I don't think, if you emboss an image, but I got a little bit heavy-handed there with the water and the watercolor, but I don't mind the messy effect with the watercolor. That is one of the beautiful things I love about it, is the movement and the shading you just get naturally from watercolor. So these are my two favorite techniques. Embossing is number one, heat embossing, and then watercoloring is number two. So I just decided to spend some time using these techniques today and sharing a card. I let the pink dry for a minute, and then I went back over with the color again. So I'm going to get a little bit of shading from that. I left the tails, the ends of that flower, a little bit lighter on purpose. Now I'm going to this beautiful purple here, kind of fading that out a little bit. And you can always remove some of your watercolor by adding a little bit more water, taking my brush over. I can pull some of that off if it gets too dark. Now I like to let mine dry on its own as much as possible. You can use a heat tool, but I think that you just get a little bit more of an organic look if you just let the water go kind of where it wants to. So I was going to choose a lighter color blue, but I decided to stay in this same palette. And I'll link these colors. I picked these up probably at my local Hobby Lobby or Michael's years ago. They are a beautiful set of colors. I have several of them. I have that tropical ones I'm using. I think there was a pastel one that I had in my hand, and there are a couple of more just really pretty. They're small little sets, so they fit very well in a drawer. And I've always appreciated the color tones of them and the quality. So I'll link those in the description too. I can't remember what brand they are offhand without looking at the tin, but I'll link it in there for sure. And then I'm just taking this blue and I'm going around lightly and letting that dry. And again, removing some of the color as needed. If I get too heavy-handed, I also had a little spot that I missed, so I'm just going to go back and pull a little bit of that color because it was a tiny bit dark. I've got this LDRS slimline set that I've had for a while from HSN that has these great frames, and I decided to use this one there's some sentiments that are in this floral stamp set. So I'm just picking which one will work well in that. I thought about using the oval one that's also included in that slimline set, but since I already had kind of a round flower, I wanted to have a little bit more of an angle there to kind of offset from that yellow flower, because I'm going to lay this sentiment on top of there a little bit. Just using some black archival ink here that I had on my table, and I'm going to give that a smush, and then got that beautiful stitch detail on there. So my panel is dry. I'm going to take a second to create my card base. I was just going to fold it in half, but this paper is a little bit thicker, and so I felt that I needed to use my Martha Stewart scoring tool that I love so much, and that way I wouldn't ruin my cardstock. I'm a bit of a lazy crafter these days. I tell you what, I'm looking for shortcuts, it seems like. So I've got to pay a little bit more attention and make sure that my card bases are presentable. And that scoring tool, or any scoring tool, is great to help you get a nice edge on your card base. I've added some foam here to the Oh Hey There Friend. I'm just trying to straighten this up visually. You could use a ruler, but I'm just trying to use this grid mat that I have to try and get it somewhat straight. And then also included in that stamp set are some pretty dies that go with these florals. And so I just cut a few of these out from some light green and kind of a bright green. And then there's a third color of green. But I'm going to trim these down. There are 3 different ones. And I'm just going to glue these directly onto my card underneath my sentiment. That's why I popped it up. But I put that foam in the middle so I could go back in and kind of fill in this sort of bouquet looking thing. And I thought about using that darker color, but it just didn't go. So I'm going to stick with the 3 that I initially chose. Again, just nipping off the end and figuring out where I'm going to place this little leaf cluster, I guess I should say. And then just getting the direction where I go. I'm not spending too much time on this. I really like an organic look to things. Things in life are unbalanced. Out in nature, not everything grows perfectly. So I don't mind having things look a little kind of wonky, because that's how things are outside anyway. I'm going to trim off this last little tail to kind of bring that cluster together. And now I'm going to go back and add a couple of trio of sequins. I have these sequins. If you've watched any of my videos, you've seen this container come out countless times. I love this container. It is great. I know I purchased this at my local Hobby Lobby many, many years ago. I have many of them for sequins. They are perfect for this application. But this particular sequin I have had forever, and I've used them many times. I love them because they have some sparkle and shine to kind of tie your project together, but they don't overwhelm your image. Sometimes if I use a sequin that has color, I feel that it draws the eye away from my focal point. But these sequins, these kind of neutral colored, clear, iridescent sequins, help add something without taking away, if that makes sense. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to try and watercolor or emboss at your house. If this is a technique you love, I love it, love it, love it. I just wanted to share. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching.